Natalia's hands shook as she cleaned the wooden bookshelf, trying not to think about the strong stare she felt on her back. She had been working in Rafael Santangelo's big house for 3 weeks, and every day felt like walking through a danger zone. The most dangerous man in New York had a way of looking at her that made her forget how to breathe. "You missed a spot." His deep voice spoke behind her, so close she could feel his breath on her neck. Her heart pounded against her chest as she turned around, finding herself trapped between the bookshelf and 6 feet of pure danger dressed in an expensive Italian suit. Raphael's dark eyes held secrets that could destroy kingdoms. But when he looked at her like this, like she was something special instead of just another worker, she felt her carefully built walls falling down. "Mr. Santangelo, she whispered. But the words stopped when his finger touched along her jawline. "You shouldn't look at me like that, Natalia," he said quietly, his voice rough with control. "Because if you keep looking at me like you want me as much as I want you, I won't be able to stop myself from taking what's mine." But what Rafael didn't know was that Natalia Cruz was hiding a secret that could get them both killed. If you want to find out how this forbidden love story began and what dangerous secret Natalia is hiding, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more exciting stories like this one. 3 weeks earlier, Natalia Cruz stood outside the huge iron gates of the Santangelo home, holding her cleaning supplies and trying to calm her racing heart. The mansion stood before her like something from a dark fairy tale, all sharp corners and shadowed windows that seemed to watch her every move. She needed this job badly. The medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment had used up every penny she'd saved, and the cleaning agency had promised this job paid 3 times her usual amount. What they hadn't mentioned was that her new boss was Rafael Santangelo, a name whispered in fear throughout New York's criminal world. "You must be the new girl," a rough voice said behind her. Natalia spun around to find a huge man in a black suit, studying her with sharp eyes. Everything about him screamed danger, from his scarred knuckles to the bulge beneath his jacket that could only be a weapon. "I'm Natalia Cruz," she said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "I'm here for the housekeeping job." "Marco Benedetti," he replied, pressing a button that made the gates swing open with a scary creak. "I handle security. First rule, you see nothing, hear nothing, and speak to no one except the boss. Understood?" She nodded, following him up the curving driveway lined with perfectly trimmed hedges that probably cost more than her yearly rent. The mansion grew larger with each step, its windows shining like dark eyes in the afternoon sun. Inside, Natalia's breath caught. The entrance hall alone was bigger than her entire apartment, with marble floors that reflected the light from a crystal chandelier that belonged in a palace. Oil paintings in heavy gold frames lined the walls, portraits of serious-faced men who looked like they'd built kingdoms on blood and secrets. "He's in his office," Marco said, nodding toward a set of double doors made from wood so dark it was almost black. "Don't knock. He hates to be interrupted." "Boss." But as they got closer, one of the doors swung open, and Natalia's world tilted on its side. Rafael Santangelo was nothing like she'd expected. The newspapers made him sound like a monster, but the man standing before her was incredibly handsome in a way that made her forget how to breathe. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the smooth grace of a hunter, every line of his body showing controlled power. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his olive skin seemed to glow in the afternoon light streaming through the windows. But it was his eyes that trapped her. Deep brown, almost black, and so strong she felt like he could see straight through to her soul. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. The jacket was open to show a crisp white shirt that emphasized the strong column of his throat. A thin gold chain disappeared beneath his collar, and she caught a glimpse of dark ink on his neck, a tattoo that spoke of loyalty, family, and secrets she couldn't begin to imagine. "You're late," he said, his voice carrying a slight Italian accent that made her knees weak. "I'm sorry, Mr. Santangelo. The bus was—" "You take the bus?" His eyebrows rose, and something flickered in his expression. "Marco, why is my new employee taking public transportation?" "Boss, I didn't know. From now on, she has a car and driver." Raphael's gaze never left Natalia's face, studying her like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. We can't have our people looking like they're struggling. It reflects poorly on the family. Natalia's cheeks burned with embarrassment and anger. I don't need charity, Mr. Santangelo. I can take care of myself. The words were out before she could stop them, and Marco's sharp breath told her she'd just made a terrible mistake. In Rafael's world, no one spoke back to the boss, ever. But instead of anger, something like respect flickered in Rafael's dark eyes. Is that so? He said quietly, taking a step closer. And how exactly have you been taking care of yourself, Miss Cruz? The way he said her name made her shiver, each syllable rolling off his tongue like a touch. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze despite every instinct screaming at her to look away. I work 3 jobs, Mr. Santangelo. I pay my own bills and ask for nothing from anyone. I'm here because I'm good at what I do, not because I need your pity. Silence stretched between them, thick with tension. Marco looked like he was ready to throw her out forcefully, but Rafael's lips curved in what might have been a smile. 3 jobs? He repeated thoughtfully. And what are the other 2? I waitress at Rosario's on weekends and clean offices downtown during the week. Rosario's? His expression darkened. That neighborhood isn't safe for a woman alone, especially at night. I can handle myself. I'm sure you can. His voice was soft, but there was steel beneath the silk. But you won't be working there anymore. Your salary here will more than make up for the loss. It wasn't a request. Natalia opened her mouth to argue, but something in his expression stopped her. This man was used to being obeyed, and she was already walking a dangerous line. Marco will show you around, Rafael continued, straightening his cufflinks with movements that were somehow both elegant and threatening. You'll start in the East Wing. My private rooms are off limits unless specifically requested. He turned to go, then paused, looking back over his shoulder. And Miss Cruz, welcome to the family. The way he said family made her blood run cold and hot at the same time. In his world, family meant everything: loyalty, protection, and punishments for betrayal that she didn't want to imagine. As Rafael disappeared into his office, Natalia realized she'd just stepped into a world where one wrong move could cost her everything. But as she watched the door close behind him, she couldn't shake the feeling that the most dangerous thing in this mansion wasn't the armed guards or the secrets hidden in every shadow. It was the way Rafael Santangelo looked at her, like she was already his. 2 weeks into her job, Natalia had developed a routine that kept her as far from Rafael as possible. She arrived early, cleaned quickly, and left before he returned from whatever business kept him away during the day. It was a system that worked perfectly until the morning she walked into his study and found him sitting behind his huge desk, very much awake and very much watching her. Good morning, Natalia, he said without looking up from the papers spread before him. Don't mind me. Continue with your work. Her hands tightened on her cleaning supplies. The study was Rafael's private room, filled with leather-covered books, expensive artwork, and the kind of old furniture that belonged in museums. She'd only cleaned it when she was certain he was gone. I can come back later, Mr. Santangelo. No need. He finally looked up, and the strength of his gaze made her breath catch. I have calls to make. Pretend I'm not here. Pretending Rafael Santangelo wasn't in the room was like pretending the sun wasn't shining. His presence filled every corner, making the air thick with tension and something else she didn't want to name. Natalia began dusting the bookshelves, super aware of every movement she made. Behind her, Rafael's voice rumbled in rapid Italian as he did business, the foreign words flowing like music. She'd studied Italian in high school, a fact she'd carefully hidden from everyone in this house. "Si, capisco," Rafael said into the phone, his tone sharp with authority. But if Torino thinks he can move product through our territory without permission, he's about to learn otherwise. Natalia's hands stopped on the books. She shouldn't be listening to this. Couldn't be listening to this. But the conversation continued in Italian, and she found herself understanding every word. No, Marco. No violence unless absolutely necessary. We're businessmen, not animals. Set up a meeting. I'll handle Torino personally. The call ended and silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket. Natalia forced herself to continue dusting, but she could feel Rafael's eyes on her, studying her with a strength that made her skin prickle. You understand Italian? It wasn't a question. Natalia's heart pounded against her chest as she turned to face him, her mind racing for an explanation that wouldn't get her killed. A little, she lied, meeting his gaze despite the fear clawing at her throat. High school classes. Rafael leaned back in his chair, his fingers pressed together beneath his chin. Is that so? And what did you think of my conversation with Marco? I didn't understand most of it, she said quickly. Something about a meeting? He studied her for a long moment, and she had the scary feeling he could see right through her lies. In his world, knowledge was power, and power in the wrong hands was deadly. Come here, he said softly. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but Natalia forced herself to walk around the desk until she stood beside his chair. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. The tattoo on his neck was clearer now, elegant writing in what looked like Latin. Do you know what this says? He asked, noticing her gaze. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Famiglia soprattutto. Family above all. His fingers traced the ink absently. It's a reminder of what matters most in this world. Loyalty, trust, the bonds that can never be broken. It's beautiful, she whispered and meant it. Something shifted in his expression, surprise flickering in his dark eyes. You think so? Yes. Family is everything. And what about your family, Natalia? Do you have people who depend on you? The question hit too close to home. Images flashed through her mind. Her mother in the hospital bed, pale and weak, fighting a battle she was slowly losing. The medical bills that kept coming, each one a reminder that time was running out. My mother, she said quietly. She's sick. I'm sorry. The sympathy in his voice sounded real, and when his hand covered hers where it rested on the desk, she didn't pull away. What kind of sick? Cancer. Stage 3. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. The treatments are expensive, and insurance only covers so much. Rafael's thumb traced across her knuckles, the touch sending sparks up her arm. Is that why you work 3 jobs? 2 now, she corrected, then immediately regretted drawing attention to his interference in her life. But you shouldn't be in that neighborhood alone. His grip tightened slightly. It's not safe for someone like you. Someone like me? Beautiful, innocent, unprotected. The words hung between them, charged with meaning she was afraid to think about too closely. Natalia tried to pull her hand away, but Rafael's fingers closed around hers, holding her in place. Mr. Santangelo. Rafael, he corrected. When we're alone, call me Rafael. That's not appropriate. Nothing about this is appropriate, he said quietly, his voice rough with something that made her pulse race. But I find I don't care about appropriate when it comes to you. Before she could respond, the study door burst open, and Marco rushed in with 3 other men she didn't recognize. All of them were armed, their faces serious with urgency. Boss, we have a problem, Marco said, then stopped short when he saw Natalia. Should she? She stays, Rafael said, his hand still covering hers. What's the problem? Torino's men hit one of our warehouses. 3 of our guys are in the hospital, and they took the entire shipment. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Rafael's face went completely blank, but Natalia could feel the rage coming from him like heat from a fire. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. How many men? 6, maybe 8. They knew exactly where to hit and when. Someone gave them inside information. Rafael's fingers tightened on Natalia's hand, and she realized he was using her as an anchor, keeping himself grounded when everything in him wanted to explode into violence. Double security on all our properties, he said quietly. And find out who talked. When you do, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. What about Torino? Set up the meeting tonight. Neutral ground. Rafael's smile was sharp as a blade. It's time Mr. Torino and I had a conversation about respect. The men filed out, leaving Natalia alone with Rafael once again. But the man sitting beside her now was different from the one who'd been gently stroking her hand moments before. This was the Rafael Santangelo the newspapers wrote about, cold, calculating, and absolutely deadly. "You should go," he said without looking at her. "This isn't something you need to see." But as she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Natalia." She looked back to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Be careful going home tonight. Stay in well-lit areas and call if you need anything. I don't have your number." He pulled out his phone and held it toward her. "Put your number in. I'll text you mine." She hesitated, knowing that accepting his number would cross a line she couldn't uncross. But the concern in his eyes was real, and in a world where she had no one to protect her, the offer was too tempting to refuse. Her fingers shook as she entered her contact information and handed the phone back. Their fingers brushed and electricity shot up her arm. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Rafael said, his voice dark with promise. "Because now that I have your number, I'm going to use it. And once I start calling you, Natalia, I won't be able to stop." As she left the study, Natalia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Rafael. Save my number. And remember, you're under my protection now. That means something in this world." She stared at the message, her heart pounding. She'd come here looking for a job, but somehow she'd stumbled into something far more dangerous. She was falling for the most feared man in New York, and there was no going back. The text came at 2 a.m. "Are you awake?" Natalia stared at her phone screen, her heart racing. She'd been lying in bed for hours, unable to sleep, thinking about the way Rafael had looked at her in his study, the way his hand had felt covering hers, the way he'd said her name like it was something special. "Yes," she typed back before she could stop herself. Her phone rang immediately. "I couldn't sleep." Rafael's voice was rough, close in the darkness. "I keep thinking about what happened today. Are you okay?" The meeting with Torino went exactly as planned. "He won't be a problem anymore." There was satisfaction in his voice, but also something else. Something that sounded like loneliness. "That's not what I meant." Natalia pulled her blanket tighter around herself, suddenly aware that she was talking to one of the most dangerous men in the city while wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt. "What did you mean?" "I meant the way you looked at me when Marco came in. Like you were worried about me." His laugh was bitter. "No one worries about me, Natalia. People fear me, respect me, obey me. But worry? That's not something I'm used to." "Maybe they should," she said softly. "Worry about you, I mean. You're human, not a machine." Silence stretched between them, and for a moment she thought she'd said too much. Then Rafael's voice came through the phone, softer than she'd ever heard it. "Where are you right now?" "In bed. In my apartment." "Describe it to me." The request was personal, almost invasive, but something in his tone made her answer. "It's small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. The walls are white because I can't afford to paint them. There's a window that faces the alley, and I can hear the neighbors arguing through the walls." "And you're in bed?" "Yes." "What are you wearing?" The question sent heat spiraling through her body. She should hang up, should tell him this was inappropriate. Instead, she found herself answering. "A t-shirt. It's old and soft and too big for me. Nothing else." Rafael. His name was a whisper, a prayer, a surrender. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked that." But his voice was rough with want, and she could picture him in his huge mansion, probably in a bed that cost more than her car, thinking about her in her tiny apartment. I can't stop thinking about you. You shouldn't be thinking about me at all." "Why not?" "Because I'm nobody. I clean houses for a living. She gestured helplessly, even though he couldn't see her. "You're you. You think I care about money, about status?" His voice was fierce now. "Natalia, I've had women throw themselves at me because of my name, my power, my wealth. But you look at me like I'm just a man. Do you have any idea how rare that is? You are just a man." "No," he said quietly. "I'm not. I'm a man who's done things that would give you nightmares. I'm a man who's built a kingdom on violence and fear. I'm a man who could destroy your life with a single phone call. Then why are you calling me? Because for the first time in my life, I want to be the man you see when you look at me. I want to be worthy of the way you say my name. Tears pricked at her eyes. Rafael, I know I'm being selfish. I know I should stay away from you. But I can't, Natalia. I've tried and I can't. This is dangerous. Everything about my life is dangerous. But you make me want to be better, safer. You make me want to build something instead of just taking it. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be with someone like you. You don't have to be with me, he said, but she could hear the pain in his voice. I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking for a chance. One dinner, one conversation where we're not boss and employee. Just Rafael and Natalia. And if I say yes? Then I'll pick you up tomorrow night at 7. We'll go somewhere quiet, somewhere we can talk. And if at the end of the evening you want me to leave you alone, I will. Natalia closed her eyes, knowing she was about to make a decision that would change everything. Okay. Just one dinner. The relief in his voice was obvious. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I might be terrible company. Impossible, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Get some sleep, Bella. I'll see you tomorrow. The line went dead, and Natalia stared at her phone, her heart pounding. She'd just agreed to have dinner with Rafael Santangelo. Not her boss, not the feared head of a crime family, just the man who'd called her in the middle of the night because he couldn't sleep. The man who made her feel like she was worth something more than the sum of her struggles. The next evening, Natalia stood in front of her tiny closet, frozen by indecision. She owned exactly 3 dresses, none of which seemed right for dinner with a man who probably spent more on wine than she made in a month. Her phone buzzed. I'm outside. Her heart jumped into her throat. She grabbed the black dress, the one she wore to job interviews and her mother's doctor appointments, and quickly applied the lipstick she saved for special occasions. When she opened her apartment door, Rafael was standing in the hallway, and the sight of him stole her breath. Gone was the business suit. Instead, he wore dark jeans that hugged his powerful frame and a black sweater that emphasized the width of his shoulders. His hair was slightly messy, as if he'd run his fingers through it, and he looked younger somehow, more approachable, more dangerous to her heart. Hi, she said softly. Hi yourself. His eyes traveled over her and she saw appreciation flicker in their depths. You look beautiful. Thank you. You look, she gestured helplessly. Different. Good different or bad different? Good different, she admitted. Very good. He smiled, a real smile, not the cold curve of his lips she'd seen in his office, and offered her his arm. Shall we? The car waiting outside wasn't the black SUV she'd expected, but a sleek silver sedan that still probably cost more than her yearly salary. Rafael opened the passenger door for her, his hand warm on her lower back as he helped her inside. Where are we going? She asked as he slid behind the wheel. Somewhere we won't be disturbed. He glanced at her as he pulled away from the curb. I hope you like Italian food. I love it. Though I should warn you, my idea of Italian food is probably very different from yours. Let me guess, Olive Garden? She laughed, surprised by his teasing tone. Hey, don't knock the breadsticks. I would never. I have great respect for unlimited breadsticks. The restaurant he took her to was small and cozy, tucked away in Little Italy with checkered tablecloths and candles flickering in wine bottles. It was the kind of place she'd always wanted to try but could never afford. Rafael. An elderly man with a thick Italian accent rushed over the moment they walked in. Mio figlio, it's been too long. Ciao, Enzo, Rafael replied, hugging the man warmly. This is Natalia. Natalia, meet Enzo Marchetti. He makes the best osso buco in the city. Bella. Enzo beamed at her, taking her hands in his weathered ones. Any friend of Rafael's is family here. Come, I have the perfect table. He led them to a corner booth that offered privacy while still allowing them to see the rest of the restaurant. As they settled in, Natalia noticed the way other diners glanced at Rafael with a mixture of respect and wariness. They know who you are, she observed. Most people in this neighborhood do. Rafael's expression was carefully neutral. Does that bother you? Should it? Probably. She studied his face, seeing the vulnerability he was trying to hide. You're testing me. Maybe. Well, for what it's worth, I'm more interested in the man who calls me at 2 a.m. because he can't sleep than the one whose reputation goes before him. Something shifted in Rafael's expression, and when he reached across the table to cover her hand with his, she didn't pull away. Tell me about your mother, he said quietly. What do you want to know? Everything. What's she like? What does she love? What makes her laugh? For the next hour, Natalia found herself opening up in ways she never had before. She told him about her mother's love of old movies, her terrible cooking, her fierce pride that wouldn't let her accept help even when she desperately needed it. She told him about the woman who'd raised her alone, working 2 jobs to keep them going, never complaining even when things got impossible. She sounds incredible, Rafael said when she finished. She is. Natalia's voice caught slightly. She's the strongest person I know. I just wish I could do more for her. You're doing everything you can. It doesn't feel like enough. Rafael's thumb traced across her knuckles, the touch sending sparks up her arm. What if I told you I could help? I'd say I can't accept that. Why not? Because I don't know what you'd want in return. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Rafael's jaw tightened, and for a moment she saw hurt flash in his eyes. You think I'd use your mother's illness to manipulate you into my bed? I don't know what to think, she said honestly. I don't understand your world, Rafael. I don't understand the rules or the prices or what happens when someone like me gets involved with someone like you. Someone like me, he repeated, his voice flat. Don't do that. Don't twist my words. Then what did you mean? Natalia took a shaky breath. I meant someone powerful. Someone who could destroy my life without even trying. Someone who's used to getting what he wants when he wants it. And you think that's what this is? Me wanting something and deciding to take it. Isn't it? Rafael was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. When he spoke, his voice was soft but strong. 6 months ago, I would have said yes. 6 months ago, if I'd wanted a woman, I would have taken her. But you, he shook his head. You make me want to earn what I'm given. You make me want to be worthy of your trust. Rafael, I'm not asking you to trust me completely. I know I haven't earned that yet. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to try. Before she could respond, Enzo appeared with their food, chattering happily about the specials and the wine he'd selected to go with their meal. The interruption gave Natalia time to think, to process the strength of Rafael's words and the way they made her feel. As they ate, the conversation turned to lighter topics. Rafael told her about growing up in his grandfather's house, about learning to cook from his nana, about the summers he'd spent in Sicily before his world became consumed by duty and violence. You miss it, she observed. The simplicity. He twirled pasta around his fork with practiced ease. But this life, it chose me as much as I chose it. My father died when I was 16. Someone had to step up, take care of the family business. 16 is young to inherit that kind of responsibility. Too young, he agreed. But age doesn't matter when people are depending on you, when their lives and livelihoods hang in the balance. Is that what you tell yourself? That it's all about protecting people? Rafael's fork paused halfway to his mouth. You don't pull punches, do you? Should I? No, he said after a moment. I like that about you. You see through the excuses to the truth underneath. And what's the truth? The truth is that I've done terrible things for good reasons and good things for terrible reasons. The truth is that I'm not the hero of this story, Natalia. I'm not even sure I'm savable. Everyone's savable. You really believe that? I have to. Otherwise, what's the point of any of it? Rafael stared at her for a long moment, and she had the feeling he was seeing something in her that surprised him, something that gave him hope. You're extraordinary, he said quietly. Do you know that? Heat flooded her cheeks. I'm really not. You are. You're sitting here with me, knowing what I am, what I've done, and you're still looking at me like I might be worth saving. Maybe you are. And maybe you're going to break my heart. The words were so soft she almost missed them. But when she looked up, she saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear that he was letting her see too much. Rafael. I know this is crazy, he said, his voice rough. I know we barely know each other. I know I'm asking for something I don't deserve. But I can't walk away from you, Natalia. I've tried and I can't. What are you asking for? The chance. Time to show you that I can be the man you see when you look at me. Time to prove that this thing between us is real. Natalia's heart hammered against her chest. Every sensible part of her brain screamed that this was insane, that she was playing with fire and about to get burned. But when she looked at Rafael, really looked at him, she didn't see the feared Mafia boss. She saw a man who'd been alone for too long, who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in. She saw a man who was looking at her like she was his salvation. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Yes. But I have conditions. Relief flooded his features. Name them. No lies between us. If I ask you something, you tell me the truth, even if it's ugly. Done. No using your influence to interfere in my life without asking me first. Agreed. And no matter what happens between us, you don't hurt my mother. Ever. Something dangerous flickered in Rafael's eyes. The fact that you think you need to ask for that tells me how little you understand about the kind of man I am. Then tell me, what kind of man are you? Rafael leaned forward, his voice strong. I'm the kind of man who would burn down the world to keep you safe. I'm the kind of man who would kill anyone who tried to hurt the people you love. I'm the kind of man who's going to spend every day for the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the gift you're giving me. And what gift is that? Your trust. Your time. Your heart, if I'm lucky enough to earn it. Natalia's breath caught. Rafael. I'm falling for you, Natalia. He said quietly. I'm falling hard and fast, and I don't know how to stop it. I don't want to stop it. This is dangerous. The most dangerous thing I've ever done, he agreed. But also the most important. As they left the restaurant, Rafael's hand found hers, their fingers lacing together naturally. The night air was cool against her skin, but his touch warmed her from the inside out. What happens now? She asked as they reached his car. Now I take you home. And tomorrow, if you'll let me, I'll call you again. And then, he turned to face her, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek. Then we figure it out as we go. I don't have a map for this, Natalia. I've never felt this way about anyone before. Neither have I. Good, he said, his thumb tracing across her cheekbone. I don't want to share this feeling with anyone else. He drove her home in comfortable silence, their hands linked across the center console. When they reached her building, he walked her to the door, his presence solid and comforting in the dim hallway. Thank you, she said softly. For dinner, for everything. Thank you for saying yes. He hesitated, then leaned down to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. Sweet dreams, Bella. As she watched him drive away, Natalia touched her forehead where his lips had been, her heart full of hope and terror in equal measure. She was falling for Rafael Santangelo, and there was no going back. 3 days later, Natalia was cleaning Rafael's study when she found the photographs. They'd fallen behind his desk, surveillance photos of her apartment building, her mother's hospital, even the coffee shop where she sometimes grabbed breakfast before work. Her hands shook as she gathered them up, her mind racing with thoughts that made her stomach turn. Find something interesting? She spun around to find Rafael standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Gone was the gentleman who'd taken her to dinner, replaced by the cold stranger she'd first met. You've been watching me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes. How long? Since the day you started working here. The simple admission hit her like a physical blow. Why? Rafael stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a death knell. Because I don't trust easily, and I needed to know who you really were. And what did you find? Exactly what you told me. A woman working 3 jobs to pay for her mother's medical bills. A woman with no criminal record, no dangerous connections, no hidden plans. He paused, his dark eyes searching her face. A woman who was exactly as innocent as she appeared. But you kept watching. Yes. Even after we had dinner. Even after I trusted you. Especially then. Natalia felt something break inside her chest. Because you thought I was lying to you. No, Rafael said quietly. Because I was falling in love with you, and love makes people vulnerable. I needed to make sure you were protected. Protected from what? From my enemies. From people who might try to use you to get to me. From anyone who might see you as a weakness to use against me. She stared at him, torn between fury and heartbreak. So you had me followed. You invaded my privacy. I kept you safe, he interrupted, his voice sharp. Do you have any idea what could happen to you if the wrong people found out about us? If they decided to use you against me? That's not your choice to make. It became my choice the moment I realized I couldn't live without you. The words hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Natalia's hands clenched into fists, the photographs crumpling in her grip. You don't get to make decisions about my life without asking me, she said, her voice shaking with anger. You don't get to have me followed like some kind of criminal. You're right. The simple admission deflated some of her rage. What? You're absolutely right. I should have told you. I should have asked your permission. Rafael ran a hand through his hair, the gesture making him look younger, more vulnerable. But I was scared. Scared of what? Of losing you. Of you realizing what being with me really means and running as fast as you could in the opposite direction. And what does being with you really mean? Rafael was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if he was fighting some internal battle. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. It means you'll never be truly safe again. It means there will always be people who want to hurt you to get to me. It means living with bodyguards and bulletproof cars and the constant knowledge that loving me might get you killed. The stark honesty of his words stole her breath. Rafael. It means giving up any hope of a normal life. It means your children will grow up knowing their father is a man other people fear. It means... Stop. She crossed the room to stand in front of him, her hands coming up to frame his face. Just stop. You need to know what you're getting into. I need you to trust me enough to make my own choices. Even if those choices put you in danger. Especially then. She searched his eyes, seeing the fear and love and desperation warring there. I'm not some weak flower that needs to be protected from the truth, Rafael. I'm a grown woman who can handle whatever comes with loving you. Loving me? The words had slipped out before she could stop them. But looking at him now, seeing the hope and wonder in his expression, she couldn't bring herself to take them back. Yes, she said softly. Loving you. Rafael's hands came up to cover hers, his touch gentle despite the calluses that spoke of violence. Say it again. I love you. Even knowing what I am, what I've done? I love you because of who you are when you're with me. I love you because you called me at 2 a.m. because you couldn't sleep. I love you because you look at me like I'm something precious. Her voice broke slightly. I love you because you're trying to be better even when it's hard. Natalia. Her name was a prayer on his lips. But if we're going to do this, really do this, there can't be any more secrets between us. No more surveillance, no more making decisions about my life without me. What if keeping those secrets keeps you safe? Then we find another way. Together. Rafael stared at her for a long moment, and she could see the moment he made his choice. The moment he decided to trust her with the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. There's something else, he said quietly. Something you need to know before you decide if you really want this life. Tell me. My cousin Marco, the one you met that first day. He's been asking questions about you. About your background, your family, your connections. Why? Because he thinks you're a threat. He thinks you might be working for one of our enemies, gathering information to use against us. Natalia's blood ran cold. And what do you think? I think Marco's paranoid. But I also think his paranoia has kept our family alive for 20 years. So what does that mean for us? It means we need to be careful. It means we can't let anyone else know about our relationship until I can convince Marco that you're not a threat. And how do you plan to do that? Rafael's smile was sharp as a blade. By showing him that you're not just safe, you're family. And in our world, family is sacred. Before she could ask what he meant, the study door burst open and Marco rushed in with 2 other men she didn't recognize. All of them were armed, their faces serious with urgency. "Boss, we have a problem," Marco said, then stopped short when he saw Natalia. "She shouldn't be here for this." "She stays," Rafael said, his arm coming around her waist in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. "What's the problem?" "Torino's nephew. He's been asking questions about our operations. About you specifically." "What kind of questions?" "Personal ones. About your routines, your security, your—" Marco's eyes flicked to Natalia. "Your weaknesses." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Rafael's face went completely blank, but Natalia could feel the rage coming from him like heat from a fire. "How long has this been going on?" "We're not sure. Could be days, could be weeks." "But boss," Marco hesitated. "They know about her." Rafael's arm tightened around Natalia's waist. "What do they know?" "They know she works here. They know where she lives. They know about her mother." The words hit Natalia like a physical blow. "My mother." "They've been watching the hospital," Marco continued, his voice serious. "Asking questions about her treatment, her schedule, her visitors." "No," Natalia whispered, her knees going weak. "No, they can't." "They won't touch her," Rafael said, his voice deadly calm. "I'll make sure of it." "How?" "By ending this before it starts." He turned to Marco. "Double security on the hospital. I want men on every floor, every entrance, every exit. And I want Torino's nephew found tonight." "Boss, if we move against him?" "Then we move against him. He threatened my family. That's a line that doesn't get crossed." The way he said family made Natalia's heart skip a beat. In his world, that word meant everything: loyalty, protection, and punishments for those who dared to threaten what was his. "What about the girl?" Marco asked, nodding toward Natalia. "She's under my protection now. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally." "Rafael," Natalia said quietly, "I should go to my mother." "I should." "You should stay here where I can keep you safe." "I can't just hide while she's in danger." "You're not hiding. You're being smart." Rafael turned to face her, his hands coming up to frame her face. "Natalia, listen to me. These people don't play games. If they think they can use you or your mother to get to me, they will. And they won't hesitate to hurt you both in the process. So what do? We end this quickly and permanently." The cold certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, she found herself feeling grateful that this man, this dangerous, powerful, deadly man, was on her side. "How long will it take?" "A few hours, maybe less." Rafael's thumb traced across her cheekbone. "Can you trust me to handle this?" "Yes. Even if it means I have to do things you might not approve of?" Natalia thought about her mother lying helpless in a hospital bed, about the men who were watching her, planning to use her as a weapon against the man she loved. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "Do whatever you have to do." Something shifted in Rafael's expression: surprise, admiration, and something that looked like pride. "You continue to amaze me. Just bring yourself home safe." "Always," he promised, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Marco will stay with you until I get back." "I don't need a babysitter." "You need protection. And Marco is the best at what he does." As Rafael and his men prepared to leave, Natalia caught his arm. "Rafael?" "Yes. I meant what I said earlier. About loving you." His smile was soft and genuine, a stark contrast to the cold mask he'd worn moments before. "I love you too, Bella. More than I ever thought possible. Then come back to me. Nothing in this world could keep me away." As the door closed behind him, Natalia sank into Rafael's chair, her hands shaking with adrenaline and fear. In the space of an hour, her world had shifted completely. She was no longer just a woman who'd fallen for the wrong man. She was Rafael Santangelo's woman, and in his world that made her both precious and dangerous. But as she thought about the way he'd looked at her, like she was worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth loving, she realized she wouldn't change a thing. She was his, and he was hers, and whatever came next, they would face it together. Natalia stood on the terrace of Rafael's penthouse, watching the sun set over the city that had become her home. The view was breathtaking. Manhattan spread out below them like a glittering jewel, the Hudson River reflecting the last rays of golden light. "Penny for your thoughts," Rafael said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart against her spine. Just thinking about how much has changed. Good changes? The best changes. She turned in his arms, studying the face that had become more precious to her than anything in the world. "My mother's responding well to the new treatment. Dr. Martinez says she could be in remission within 6 months. Thanks to you." "Thanks to us," Rafael corrected, his hands coming up to frame her face. "You're the one who researched the experimental therapy. You're the one who convinced her to try it. You're the one who made it possible. I'm the one who loves you enough to move heaven and earth to make you happy." The simple declaration still had the power to steal her breath. 3 months ago, she'd been a woman struggling to make ends meet, working multiple jobs just to survive. Now she was living in a penthouse, her mother was getting the best medical care money could buy, and she was loved by a man who would do anything to protect her. "The Torino situation is really over?" she asked. "Completely. His nephew won't be bothering anyone ever again, and the rest of the family has decided they prefer peace to war." She didn't ask for details. She'd learned that some parts of Rafael's world were better left unexplored, and he'd learned to trust her enough to handle the truth when she needed to know it. "And Marco has finally accepted that you're not a threat to the family. In fact, I think he's starting to like you." "Only starting?" "He brought you cannoli from his mother yesterday. In our world, that's practically a marriage proposal." Natalia laughed, the sound bright and free in the evening air. "Good thing I'm already taken." "Very taken," Rafael agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "Completely and totally claimed by a man who doesn't deserve you but is too selfish to let you go." "You deserve me," she said firmly. "You deserve happiness, Rafael. You deserve love." "I deserve you," he corrected, then reached into his jacket pocket. Natalia's heart stopped when she saw the small velvet box in his hand. "Rafael, I know it's fast. I know we've only been together for 3 months. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy." He dropped to one knee, and the city lights seemed to dim in comparison to the love shining in his eyes. "Natalia Cruz, will you marry me?" The ring was perfect, a classic solitaire that caught the light and threw it back in brilliant sparkles. But it was the man holding it that took her breath away. The man who'd shown her what it meant to be cherished, protected, loved beyond reason. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." Rafael's smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to pull her into his arms. His kiss was gentle at first, then deeper, filled with all the love and promise and hope that had brought them to this moment. "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." "I love you too. Always." "Always," he agreed. And in his voice she heard the vow that went deeper than words. The promise that no matter what came next, they would face it together. As they stood on the terrace, wrapped in each other's arms with the city sparkling below them, Natalia thought about the woman she'd been when she first walked through Rafael's gates, scared, alone, struggling just to survive. Now she was engaged to the most powerful man in New York, her mother was getting better, and she was surrounded by a family that would protect her with their lives. She'd come looking for a job and found her soulmate instead. "What are you thinking about now?" Rafael asked, noticing her smile. "Just thinking that sometimes the most dangerous paths lead to the most beautiful destinations." "And you're not afraid anymore? Of loving you?" "Never." She looked up at him, seeing her future reflected in his dark eyes. "You're my home, Rafael. My safety. My everything." "And you're mine," he said simply. "Forever and always you're mine." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Natalia knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. She was no longer the frightened cleaning lady who'd stumbled into a world of danger and secrets. She was Rafael Santangelo's woman, and in his world that made her untouchable. But more than that, she was loved, completely, desperately, eternally loved by a man who had shown her that even the darkest hearts could be saved by the right kind of light. And as Rafael spun her around on the terrace, both of them laughing with pure joy, Natalia knew that their love story was just beginning. This story has reached its beautiful conclusion. If it touched your heart and made you believe in the power of life-changing love, please leave a like and share it with someone who enjoys passionate romance stories. New exciting tales of love and redemption are coming soon. Until next time, keep believing in happily ever after.